Ladies and gentlemen, it's so easy to feel behind in life when you're constantly measuring yourself against the world around you. Everywhere you look, there's someone achieving something you wish you had. The promotion, the relationship, the body, the confidence. It seems like everyone else has figured it out while you're still trying to find your footing. And if you're not careful, you start believing the story in your head that says, I should be further along by now. But here's the truth. There is no universal timeline. No one is born with a script that dictates when things should happen. The only reason we feel behind is because we're comparing our journey to someone else's. And that's the fastest way to kill your progress. Think about it. If you're constantly looking sideways, measuring your pace against everyone else, you're not focused on your own path. You're not seeing what's in front of you. You're too distracted by what someone else is doing to even take the next step for yourself. And the irony, the people you're comparing yourself to, the ones who seem so far ahead, they're doing the exact same thing. They have their own moments of doubt, their own struggles that you don't see. Because no one posts their failures, no one broadcasts the days they felt lost. You're only seeing the curated highlight reel, not the full picture. The worst part about comparison is that it convinces you that you're lacking something, that you're somehow incomplete because you don't have what they have. But your worth isn't measured by how fast you get somewhere. It's measured by how much you grow along the way. And the moment you internalize that, you take back your power. You stop playing the game of trying to catch up to a finish line that doesn't exist, and you start focusing on what actually matters. Your own progress, your own happiness, your own sense of fulfillment. Now, that doesn't mean you stop having goals. It doesn't mean you give up on ambition. It means you redefine success on your terms. Instead of asking, why am I not there yet? Start asking, what's one thing I can do today to move forward? Instead of obsessing over how far ahead someone else is, focus on your own small victories, because those moments, those tiny daily wins are what actually build confidence. They're what create momentum. And momentum is everything. Imagine you're running a race, but you're spending more time looking over at the lanes next to you than focusing on your own stride. What happens? You lose speed, you get distracted, you might even trip because your attention is everywhere but where it needs to be. But the person who wins, they keep their eyes forward. They focus on their own movement, their own breath, their own rhythm. That's how progress is made. You might feel behind right now, but feeling behind is just that, a feeling. It's not reality. It's a perception shaped by what you choose to focus on. And if you can shift your focus from what others have to what you can control, everything changes. You start to realize that you are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be to take the next step forward. So let go of the need to measure yourself against someone else's timeline. Your journey is yours alone. And the only person you need to impress is the version of yourself that existed yesterday. Keep going. We all have moments where we feel stuck, like no matter what we do, we're not moving forward. Nothing will move forward. It's frustrating. You look around and everyone else seems to be making progress, hitting milestones, and you start to wonder if you're falling behind. But let me tell you something. The feeling of being behind is often just an illusion. And it's an illusion that disappears the moment you realize that progress isn't about giant leaps. It's about small, consistent steps in the right direction. The problem most people face isn't that they lack ambition, it's that they think too big too soon. They wait for the perfect opportunity, the perfect moment, or the perfect plan. They set massive goals, get excited for a few days, and then feel overwhelmed when reality kicks in. And that's when the voice in their head starts whispering, "See, you're not good enough. You're too far behind." That's the trap. The truth is, the biggest changes in your life won't come from a sudden breakthrough. They come from the small, seemingly insignificant choices you make every single day, the tiny actions that feel so unimportant in the moment, but over time, build real momentum. And momentum is everything, because when you have momentum, even the smallest steps feel rewarding. They reinforce your belief that you are capable. And that belief, that's what carries you forward. Let's say you want to get in shape. You don't need to wake up tomorrow and run a marathon. You don't need to spend 3 hours in the gym every day. If you're someone who's been inactive for a long time, maybe all you need to do today is go for a 10-minute walk. That's it, just a walk. Doesn't sound impressive, right? But here's what happens. When you get up and move, you're proving to yourself that you can do something. The next day, maybe you go for 15 minutes. The next week, you start doing some light exercises. And before you know it, you've built a habit. You've created momentum. And now, exercise isn't something you struggle to force yourself to do. It's just part of who you are. The same applies to every area of life. You want to build confidence in dating? You don't need to be the most charming person in the room. You don't need to have the perfect one-liner or the best pickup strategy. Maybe all you need to do today is make eye contact and smile at someone. Maybe tomorrow you say hello. Maybe next week you start a conversation, and then one day you look back and realize you're no longer the person who feels awkward or nervous around new people. You've become the person who naturally engages, connects, and enjoys the process. And that transformation, it started with one tiny step. The biggest enemy of progress is waiting to feel ready. Most people think they need motivation before they take action. But motivation doesn't come first. Action comes first. And motivation follows. It's like pushing a car. The hardest part is getting it to move in the first place. But once it starts rolling, it gets easier. And that's how momentum works. The first step is always the hardest, but once you take it, the next one feels more natural. And the next, until suddenly you realize you're not stuck anymore. Think about the times in your life when you've actually made progress. It wasn't because of one grand event. It was because of the little things you did consistently. Maybe it was showing up for a class even when you didn't feel like it. Maybe it was sending that one email that led to an opportunity. Maybe it was choosing to say yes to something that scared you. It was those tiny moments that built the bigger picture. So if you're feeling behind, if you're feeling stuck, stop looking at how far you have to go. Stop obsessing over how much time you think you've lost. Instead, ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do today? Just one. Because that's all it takes to start building momentum. And once you have momentum, everything changes. You don't have to get it perfect. You just have to get it started.
We've all had those moments where it feels like life is slipping through our fingers, like we're watching everyone else move forward while we're standing still. Maybe it's seeing friends get promoted while you're stuck in the same job. Maybe it's watching people settle down in relationships while you're still figuring yourself out. Or maybe it's just this feeling that you should be further along by now. And if that sounds familiar, let me tell you something that might change the way you see all of this. Your timeline is not broken. We get so caught up in this idea that life has a set schedule, that by a certain age, we should have a successful career, a great relationship, a sense of purpose, and a steady direction. And when we don't, panic sets in. But whose timeline are we even following? Who wrote this invisible rulebook that tells us we're late? Because I can promise you this, it wasn't written for you. It wasn't written for your specific circumstances, your unique experiences, or the journey that you're meant to be on. The truth is, there is no universal deadline for success, love, or happiness. Some people find their dream job at 22, others at 52. Some people fall in love young, others later in life. Some take detours, some take longer. Some move fast and burn out just as quickly. But in the end, none of that actually matters, because fulfillment isn't about how quickly you get somewhere. It's about how aligned you are with where you're going. Think about it. How many people rush to check all the boxes? Career, marriage, financial stability, only to wake up one day feeling completely unfulfilled. They got there on time, but they weren't happy. Why? Why? Because they weren't doing it on their terms. They were following a script written by someone else, society, family, peer pressure, without ever stopping to ask, Is this even what I want? That's the real question you need to ask yourself. Not, am I behind? But am I on a path that actually excites me? Because being on time for a life you don't even want is just another way of wasting time. And if right now you feel like you're lagging, I want you to consider something. What if this delay isn't a punishment, but a gift? What if life is actually giving you the space to figure out what truly matters to you? What if this is your chance to build something meaningful, rather than just ticking off arbitrary milestones? I'll tell you something that changed the way I think about timing. We always hear about overnight success stories, but we rarely talk about the years that went into them. We don't see the late nights, the failures, the dead ends, the moments of doubt. We just see the highlight reel. And when we compare our real lives to someone else's curated success story, we're setting ourselves up to feel like failures. But behind every success, there was a journey. Behind every great love story, there were moments of loneliness. Behind every breakthrough, there were years of trial and error. And if you're in that process right now, don't mistake it for failure. It's just part of the story you'll one day tell. You see, the most important thing isn't how fast you get there. It's that you keep going. It's that you stay open. It's that you don't let a temporary feeling of being lost convince you that you're not meant to find your way. And here's the irony. Sometimes the very people who seem ahead are the ones who feel the most lost, because they rushed to a destination before they were even sure it was where they wanted to be. They made choices out of fear, out of pressure, out of a desperate need to feel like they were on track. But you have a chance to do something different, to embrace the unknown, to trust that just because things aren't happening on someone else's timeline doesn't mean they won't happen at all. And more than that, to trust yourself enough to know that when it does happen, it will be because you were ready for it, not because you forced it. I know that's easier said than done. I know it's frustrating to feel like you're waiting while everyone else is moving. But maybe you're not waiting. Maybe you're preparing. Maybe this isn't wasted time, it's building time. Maybe every experience you're having right now is shaping you for something bigger. And if that's true, then your job isn't to stress about being behind. Your job is to make sure that whatever you're doing in this moment, you're making it count. That you're learning, growing, pushing yourself in ways that will make the next chapter of your life that much more meaningful. So stop looking at the clock. Stop measuring your life against someone else's schedule. Stop thinking you need to have it all figured out right now. Because you don't. No one does. And the people who pretend they do, they're just as lost as you are. They're just moving faster. The only thing that matters is that you keep moving in a way that feels right for you. Your timeline is not broken. It's just yours. And as long as you don't give up on yourself, you'll realize that you were never behind to begin with. Where you are today isn't a reflection of your potential. It's a reflection of your past patterns, your habits, your decisions, big and small, that have compounded over time. And that's actually good news, because it means where you go from here isn't set in stone. It's not about some grand overnight transformation. It's about the micro decisions you make every single day that shape the trajectory of your life. Most people think success is some huge, defining moment. That one breakthrough, that one opportunity, that one piece of luck. But that's not how it works. Success isn't something you wake up to one day, like winning the lottery. It's not a magical switch that flips. It's built, brick by brick, through the things you do consistently, not occasionally. The most successful people aren't the ones who always have the best circumstances. They're the ones who, day in and day out, choose to show up in ways that others don't. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that where you are today defines you. That if you're struggling, if you feel behind, if things aren't happening as fast as you'd like, then somehow you're not meant for more. But that's simply not true. The only thing your current position reveals is what's been reinforced over time by your actions. And that means if you start reinforcing new actions, a new future becomes inevitable. Every day, you're making choices that either bring you closer to the life you want or keep you stuck where you are. And often, it's not the big, obvious decisions that make the difference. It's the small, seemingly insignificant ones. The decision to start your morning scrolling through social media or use that time to set your intentions for the day. The choice to say yes to something out of obligation or to honor your own boundaries. The choice to let fear stop you from speaking up or to push through and have the conversation that could change everything. Each of these moments on their own might not seem like they matter, but repeated over time, they shape your entire reality. Think about the person you want to become. The version of you that has the confidence, the success, the relationships, the happiness you dream of. That person isn't waiting for the perfect conditions to take action. That person isn't making excuses. They're making choices every day that align with the life they want. And that's what you have to start doing now. Not tomorrow, not when you feel more motivated, not when life feels easier. Now. If you want to be confident, you don't wait until you magically feel confident one day. You act in ways that a confident person would, even when it's uncomfortable. If you want to be successful, you don't wait until someone gives you permission. You start putting in the effort, learning, showing up, refining your skills. If you want to be healthier, you don't wait until the perfect moment to start. You make the next meal a better one, the next workout happen, the next decision count. Most people sabotage themselves not because they lack talent or potential, but because they tell themselves a story that keeps them stuck. I've never been good at this. It's too late for me. I'm just not that kind of person. But those are just narratives, not facts. And every day, you have the choice to reinforce the old story or start writing a new one. And let's be honest, there's a reason why change is hard. It's because what's familiar is comfortable, even when it's not serving you. It's easier to do what you've always done because that's what your brain is wired to repeat. But comfort isn't the goal. Growth is. And growth requires making decisions that feel unfamiliar, that challenge your old patterns, that push you beyond what you've known. That's why so many people stay stuck. Not because they can't change, but because they keep choosing what feels easy over what moves them forward. But here's the thing, once you start making different choices, once you start showing up differently, even in small ways, something incredible happens. You start to trust yourself more. You start to see yourself differently. And that's when momentum kicks in. Because nothing builds confidence like keeping promises to yourself. Nothing makes you feel more powerful than realizing you're in control of your actions, and by extension, your future. You don't have to have everything figured out today. You don't need to know exactly how you're going to get from where you are to where you want to be. You just need to start reinforcing the habits, the behaviors, the mindset of the person you want to become. One small, intentional decision at a time. So if you're feeling behind, if you're wondering why things aren't happening for you yet, stop looking for some massive breakthrough. Start looking at the tiny daily actions that will accumulate into success. That's the real secret. The future isn't something that just arrives. It's something you create, choice by choice, moment by moment, starting now. Most people spend their lives waiting for the right moment, waiting for confidence, waiting for a perfect plan. Why? They sit on the sidelines, convincing themselves that once they feel ready, once everything aligns just right, then they'll finally take the leap. But the truth is, waiting doesn't lead to readiness. Action does. The people who achieve the things you want aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They're just the ones who stopped waiting for permission. The biggest myth we buy into is that successful people had everything figured out before they started. that they had an unshakable confidence, a clear roadmap, and every skill needed to execute their vision. But if you ask anyone who has built something meaningful, they'll tell you the opposite. They began before they felt ready. They took the leap before they had all the answers. And they learned along the way, because the real difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't talent or luck. It's that one group started while the other hesitated. Fear of failure is the biggest excuse for inaction. We tell ourselves, what if I mess up? What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not good enough? But let's flip that for a second. What if you never start? What if 5 years from now, you're in the same place, still wondering what could have been? The regret of inaction is far more painful than any failure ever will be. Because failure at least teaches you something. It gives you experience. It moves you forward. An atai initiator show at the sky. But doing nothing? That keeps you stuck. Most of the things we're afraid of are just illusions. We think people are waiting to judge us, but the truth is, no one is watching as closely as we think. People are too busy worrying about their own lives to scrutinize yours. And even if they do have opinions, so what? At the end of the day, it's your life. They don't have to live with the consequences of your inaction. You do. So if you're letting the fear of what others think hold you back, you're letting people who don't even play a role in your happiness dictate your future. That's insanity. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. No one feels truly confident before they do something for the first time. Think about when you learned to drive. The first time you got behind the wheel, you weren't confident. You were nervous, maybe even terrified. But you kept going. And now, driving is second nature. Life works the same way. The more you do something, the better you get. The better you get, the more confident you feel. But that cycle only starts when you take the first step. If you're waiting for the fear to disappear before you start, you'll be waiting forever. Fear doesn't vanish. It gets quieter as you build momentum. The first time you do something new, the voice of doubt is loud. But with every small step you take, that voice loses its power. Your actions prove it wrong. And eventually, the fear that once controlled you becomes nothing more than background noise. You don't need anyone's permission to go after the life you want. Not from your family, not from your friends, not from society. Some of you are waiting for external validation, for someone to tell you that you're good enough, that your dreams are worth pursuing. But if you need validation to begin, what happens when you don't get it? Are you really going to let your future be decided by whether or not someone else approves? If you believe in something, that's enough. The only validation you need is the one you give yourself. Most people dream of the life they want. Fewer take the first step toward it, and even fewer stick with it long enough to see it through. That's what separates the successful from the ones who never quite make it. It's not about having all the answers. It's about showing up over and over again, even when you don't feel ready, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels like nothing is working. Because the ones who keep showing up eventually find their breakthrough. Here's the truth. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to knock on your door and hand you your dream life. If you want something, you have to go and get it. That's the reality. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start making real progress. You don't have to know exactly how to get there. You just have to start. And the moment you do, you take back control. You stop being a spectator in your own life and become the one writing the story. So if you're waiting for a sign, here it is. Stop waiting. Stop hesitating. Stop telling yourself you'll do it later. Later is a lie. Later turns into never. And you owe yourself more than that. Whatever it is you've been putting off, take the first step today. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be something. Because once you start moving, you realize you never needed permission in the first place. There's this pressure that society puts on us to have everything figured out by a certain age. You look around and it seems like everyone is racing ahead, getting their dream job, finding the perfect partner, making more money, traveling the world, while you're standing still, wondering if you've already fallen behind. And the more you think about it, the more it feels like you've missed some invisible deadline, like there was some master plan that you somehow failed to follow. But here's what no one tells you. There is no deadline. There is no race. The only timeline that matters is the one that works for you. We have this idea that success, happiness, and fulfillment should happen fast. That if we haven't made it by a certain point, then maybe we never will. But speed is not a measure of value. The fact that something takes longer doesn't make it less meaningful. Think about the things in life that truly matter. Deep relationships, a fulfilling career, genuine self-confidence. These things don't happen overnight. They are built layer by layer through experiences, failures, adjustments, and growth. You are not late. You are not behind. You are simply on your own path. It's easy to look at someone else's success and think, why not me? Why haven't I gotten there yet? But comparison is a trap. The people you admire, they have their own struggles, their own doubts, their own insecurities. You see their highlight reel, but you don't see the years they spent struggling in the dark, questioning everything, wondering if they'd ever make it. You don't see their moments of self-doubt, their failures, their heartbreaks. You only see where they are now. And even if they got there faster than you, that doesn't mean their journey is more valid than yours. A flower doesn't bloom faster just because the one next to it did. It blooms when it's ready, and so will you. There are people who rushed into things, thinking speed was everything, only to realize they were chasing the wrong goal. They got the job, but they hate it. They got into a relationship, but they feel empty. They followed the timeline they thought they were supposed to follow, only to realize it wasn't making them happy. What's the point of getting somewhere quickly if it's not even where you want to be? It's not about being first, it's about being right. And the only way to make sure you're on the right path is to take your time, to trust yourself, and to move at a pace that allows you to grow, learn, and actually enjoy the process. If you've ever felt like you're falling behind, I want you to ask yourself, behind what? Who decided that success has an expiration date? Who made the rule that you have to figure it all out by 25 or 30 or even 40? Some of the most successful people in the world didn't hit their stride until later in life. Vera Wang didn't design her first dress until she was 40. Colonel Sanders didn't start KFC until he was in his 60s. J.K. Rowling was rejected over and over before she finally got published in her 30s. The point is, life doesn't care about arbitrary timelines. It only cares about whether or not you're willing to keep going. Some of the most incredible people you will ever meet are the ones who took their time. They made mistakes, they learned from them, they fell, they got back up. And because they didn't rush, because they allowed themselves the space to grow, they became deeper, more interesting, more fulfilled individuals. They didn't just achieve success, they built a life that felt meaningful to them. And that's the goal, isn't it? Not just to make it, but to actually feel proud of the journey it took to get there. You might not be where you want to be yet. That's okay. What matters is that you keep moving, even if it's at your own pace. The small steps you take today, the lessons you learn, the experiences you gather, all of these are shaping you into the person you need to become to handle the things you want in life. There is no right time. There is only the time you have and the way you choose to use it. So don't rush. Don't force yourself into a timeline that was never meant for you. Trust that your path is unfolding exactly as it should. And when you do get there, when you finally arrive at the place that feels right, you'll realize that every step, every delay, every setback was worth it. And it won't matter how long it took. What will matter is that you didn't give up.